Hello, angels and cherubs. Welcome again to my channel. I am so happy to be able to welcome you into what is the background here. What you see is my dining room. I'm quite into the shabby chic. Chic because, various coats of white paint can make anything shabby-esque into a little bit more of an affordable chic-esque. I like it. It works for me. So it harkens back to an era of that Victorian sort of flavor, with the granny white lace and the antique type of dressers that were made with love, and the crystal and the teacups and the flowers and the easy to find decor that very few people want because it's not terribly practical. But I make it all of the granny stuff that people are getting rid of these days in vintage shops and thrift stores and what have you. I'm scooping up because that precious crystal and those beautiful teacups that were kept locked away in cabinets for company only, so that one day when the Queen would come and visit, the lady of the house could take it out. And so it rarely came out, maybe once a year, if that. And now I get to go around collecting all kinds of pretty things and using them, and really, really enjoying them. Because I also grew up in one of those households where things were kept for, you use this and we keep that for better company. So now it's all affordable and I get to make use of it, and I really love that. I was born at a good time. So today I'm talking about tarot, and I'm taking an exercise out of a very popular book, which is by Mary K. Greer, and it is the 21 Ways to Read a Tarot Card. And I'm looking at step 19. So this book has been really well loved and a lot of writing and scribbles in it. So I'm going to walk you through my own, one of my tarot journals. This is the scribbler that I'm working in right now. And I'm going to give you a bit of an exercise that is guided by step 19 in her book. And it focuses on myth and archetypes, which is luscious. That whole theme is very luscious. So that is going to spawn, I think, several different videos. So ask away, comment, subscribe, like, tell me what you want to hear more about, and I'll see what I can do. So onward and upward. Here we go. I'm going to change the angle of the camera so that you don't have to look at me. I don't really want to be showing things up like this. It's going to be quite awkward in dealing with cards. So at this point, I'm just going to focus on the table and the exercises, but you'll hear my voice. Just use it's just straight lined paper. So in here, I have a lot of daily draws. This one here started in March. So daily draws, and it's just plain writing. I don't know if you can see that. This one is a draw that I did quite frequently. This is with from Katey Flowers. This spread. The spread was inspired by Katey Flowers, and I liked it so much. It works so well. I think I'm going to put a link below so that you can find it. It's called the Therapeutic Tarot, Self-Care and Interpersonal Effectiveness Spread. So in here, she has the spread I think, I feel, I want, and then self-care. So yeah, somewhere in here I did quite a lot of that particular spread. Anyway, so getting on to today's thing, 21 ways to read the tarot. So here I am. She says to choose one card of the major arcana that is most like myself. How is it like me? And this is your social mask or persona. So if you know a little bit about archetypes, This is the kind of the conversation that she has here in the beginning of her chapter when she talks about myths and archetypes. So for those of us who can follow, I couldn't decide as I went through all of the archetypes all of the major arcana, which one would be most like myself. So just instinctively, I selected 4 of them. So to answer these questions, I'll just give it to you in a discussion. So the reason why I selected 4, and then I ended up reducing it down to 1. So just instinctively, this is my first step in the selection process. And the Empress here, I relate to. Well, how is it most like me? Well, it's I see here my role and duty as mother and nurturer. I see myself as mother within my own family, nurturer within a lot of my relationships, and also in my job. I see myself being much of the educator, so nourishing their minds and nourishing their social skills, nourishing them as well in what they need, the affection that they need, and just working with little people. So I see myself very much as an Empress figure. I also see myself as strength, because for me, I see the inner fortitude to perform and to tame the beasts in my life. So whenever I encounter some sort of a life obstacle, people who are disagreeable or have their own, hidden agendas or what have you. Those to me are like beasts that I have to kind of work with and sort of tame. So that takes a lot of inner strength, because of course if you attack these things with aggression, quite often you'll get attacked back. So I like to try and see if I can find some way to tame the beast with kindness. So I see myself in this role quite often. And that does take wisdom and strength to be able to do. More so strength than wisdom. Wisdom, it comes from experience, but sometimes it's not easy to stand up to the bully with kindness. That is fairly challenging, because it takes some skill and some forethought. You have to be able to see patterns in behavior and to be able to predict with some accuracy what the pattern will be given who you're dealing with next time you see them. And so then the next time I see that challenge or that person or that obstacle, I need to be able to sort of say, okay, well, I've planned for this. I've meditated on this. I've thought about this. Now here's my chance to kind of change the pattern that I'm living with my interaction right now, right here today. And you can never tell what the feedback will be, because sometimes when you change your way of doing things, you receive more challenge. The stakes become higher. So that becomes a question of integrity and strength for me. That's what I see in that card. The Hermit. Oh gosh, the Hermit. Sometimes I like to really be alone, and I think that just anybody who's much of a bookworm, and somebody who journals as much as I do, and somebody who's actually going to be looking into things introspectively, such as through I don't really want to call it divinatory tools, because I don't look at tarot or runes or crystal or anything as a means of divination, but that's what they're kind of called, because historically they've been imbued with that sort of purpose. Certainly today they're used for much different things. I think their purposes are expanded. So I don't want to call tarot cards and such divinatory tools, but maybe tools of introspection might be a better way of calling it. So anybody who uses these sort of tools has a certain aspect of introspection, such as the Hermit. You're looking through the dark, and you're walking through the dark quite alone, straight back, very, very strong. White beard is seen as a symbol of wisdom and lighting the way ahead. So that I quite like my solitude and my time alone. That's where I regenerate, and that's how I know that I am at my very core an introvert. So that very introverted part of me is very much like the Hermit. So I identify with that card. Or that archetype, I should say, because these are all archetypes, right? Now, temperance. Now, you may see all of these archetypes as sort of different, in different ways, but this is what I'm seeing when I'm looking inwardly and identifying archetypes to answer the question. So temperance, of course, here we're seeing balance. Somebody who's, you look at angels as somebody with kindness and with an inner strength that comes from a celestial being. And of course, there's the question of balance. 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot in the divine. There's the road to something better, and you're balancing something. So, of course, this card has a lot. I can identify a lot more different bits and pieces in this card, but those are the things that I sort of tune into right away. Now, because of the balance between earth matters and spiritual matters, emotional matters, I would say that I would pick this card above the other ones to identify. If I had to pick one card, I would pick this one, because the balancing of all of these things I would see as what's being tempered. That's what's being tempered. It's the balance of the role of all of these archetypes within myself. So, and for that reason, because I'm kind of looking at these as a hidden sort of a booklet altogether, I would say that I'm identifying most with temperance, because I'm constantly having to balance my role as a mother, nurturer, social, just having the strength to deal with social aspects, and really preferring to be on my own so I can regenerate. That needs to be balanced. So that's me in a nutshell, to answer that question. Now, you see how I went through that way of thinking. That is the way that perhaps you might, look at the major arcana to go through this sort of exercise for yourself. And I'm going to explain the second part of this exercise, and hopefully people who are passing through, perhaps people who don't know much about tarot, may start to understand that it's really, really not about, just about divination, because that's not what I'm using it for. It's not, tarot itself is not about, some sort of devil worship or some sort of gypsy magic. It was what it was, hundreds of years ago, but now we've come to a very intelligent time in history where folk stories are somewhat entertaining, but people need much more than that to be as interested in tarot cards as they are today, because the books on tarot are really, really great sellers, and they certainly aren't just selling things and ideas that were popular once upon a time when people were in gypsy caravans. So this Rider-Waite-Smith has very traditional images in it, and it goes hand in hand with talking about the idea of myths and archetypes, because the archetypes really speak to who we are as a people. They are the ideas that transcend time and space and culture, and they are the themes that we will see everywhere at any time. And so we can identify them in the tarot. Here, though, we see what may be very spooky-ish images, and that's because we're coming to the second part of the question, which is find a card from the majors that you like the least. What do you dislike about it? And this is your shadow aspect. Now, again, I can speak more to the shadow aspect, but we do have a number of videos online with regard to Carl Jung and the shadow. I certainly will make more discussion about it in future videos, but just to sort of give an overview right here and now, and focus more on this exercise. To look at a card that you dislike the most is to pick the shadow aspect. And this is the second part of the question in Mary Greer's activity 19.1. So what I did here, again, is I just instinctively went through the major arcana, and I also included, funny enough, the ones that I did like the most, because I wanted to see, would I instinctively choose something that I didn't like? Perhaps would I have chosen the Hermit again in the majors that I dislike? Maybe there could be something here that I like and I dislike about, but I didn't. I picked other cards. So here I picked the Hierophant and the Devil and the Tower. Now, I think if you pick 100 people and you ask them to pick cards that they like and cards that they don't like, they might like, the flowers and so on, the pretty cards, and then they might dislike the ones with the lightning and the devil, and that again speaks to archetypes. So after I'm done this video, I'm also at some point going to redo this exercise with different decks, decks that show images that aren't so archetypal, and see if I can pull out some different meanings for myself and if I identify with various aspects. Now, this whole process of trying the same exercise with different decks, flipping ideas around, this is therapeutic. This is what I call therapy for me. And if you do this often enough throughout your lifetime, if you do this often enough, you're talking with yourself, you're writing in your journal, you're writing your thoughts, and definitely if you can include the dates, you're really giving yourself a gift, because therapy and counseling can be fairly expensive. But if you're diligent enough, and from time to time you do go to a qualified therapist, you can also enhance some of your own progress, just in maturity, your progress in your spiritual development, your progress in your social aptitudes, your skill set, your ability to look at situations and conversations from bird's eye view, looking at patterns of behavior within yourself and with other people. That's what I think is extraordinarily impressive about using the tarot, because it is so versatile that way. These are different aspects of our lives and of all of our lives as human beings, as part of the human experience. So here we go. These are the cards that I picked instinctively that what do you dislike about it? So the Hierophant, I wrote down, it's an oppressive authority figure. There's restrictions, the thou shalt not, that assimilate people. That's what would bother me about this. Now, I know that this looks very traditionally Catholic, and I really, really do not want to, well, first of all, I don't know of anyone who actually looks like this in the Catholic Church. I mean, this is reminiscent, but it is not actual. And having been practicing Catholicism for most of my life, I also practice paganism and Wicca, and somehow I'll have to discuss about how I make sense of things, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. I think the Catholic bit is more out of familiarity and having inherited that religion, but because it is part of my upbringing, I'm akin to it, so I have a warm spot for it. And there's a lot of paganism in Catholicism as well. So I could talk about that in another video if someone's interested. Just ask, and I certainly would love to get into that. So yeah, I don't want to say that I don't like Catholicism and that I only see it as an oppressive figure, but there are in the archetype itself, I would not like to see oppressive figures that serve to assimilate. And certainly in Canada, we've seen that with natives. In the States, we've seen that with people of color. And in various parts in the world, India, we've seen that by the Brits. We currently see that everywhere in the Middle East in various aspects, where you have oppressive systems that are wanting to assimilate other people, and so that really bothers me. That's representative of not just one point in history with Catholicism. This card is representative for me of power imbalances in a cultural, socio-political climates. So that's what I dislike about that. And here we see the Devil card. What do I see in the Devil card? Well, the Devil is your inner turmoil regarding working with people who have hidden agendas. The outcome of events do not just depend on my action. So this is kind of like chaos, but it's lack of control, I think. Now here there's discussion about when you look at the analysis of this sort of card. They are chained together, but they also are loosely chained where they are bound because they have agreed to be bound. And they could probably, leave if they so please. There's just seems to be some hidden agendas here. These two humans have grown horns, and they're under the influence of, obviously, the great man here who's got horns, and there are some influences here. The elements are above the spirit, which is the inverted pentagram. So I think what bothers me most there is the hidden agendas that I see, and not quite being able to control it so that the greater good of all concern can actually happen out of a certain situation. That bothers me. Feeling powerless over the pain that people are going through. The tower here to me shows chaos. So I don't like that part. People suffering at the hands of others, or misfortune. So here, I think it was with the Urban Tarot, you see the Twin Towers image in the place of this card. I think it's quite appropriate because that's always what I've thought of when I, ever since the Twin Towers came down. When I see the Tower card, I see people plunging to their death and this tower being attacked by something. There's somebody in authority, a crown, attacking the tower, and that other people are falling to their demise. So that is one of the many ways you can look at the Tower card. But if I look at it that way, that bothers me. So if I were to reduce all of these cards to one, I had to choose one. It was really very difficult, but I think I would choose the Tower. And the Tower here would then, according to Greer, be my shadow. So watching chaos, not being able to control it, people suffering at the hands of others, and only being able to watch their misfortune. Because it reminds me of looking on TV, looking at all these terrible images, and not only of the Twin Towers, but when I see people generally going through chaos and turmoil and not really being able to interfere in their lives because it's not my place, or I don't have the power, or it's none of my business, or whatever. That really bothers me. So I find solace in being able to go back, being the introvert, and praying, because that's really all I can do for them. So that's the best I can do for them, and that's what I do. So that's the exercise that I really want to kind of bring to you. There are other exercises that she does do in this chapter that are pretty exciting. I won't go into them in detail, but I will mention that she does talk about various archetypes in her book. She mentions, and then she gives you an exercise to go through the entire deck, the deck in its entirety, and then choose cards and then group them into different archetypes and then make a study of that. So that is so interesting. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and so that I don't forget things, I like to write those things down. And in taking the time and thinking about organizing them into archetypes, in the writing down, what I'm left with is an education that I'm giving myself. And that's what I would impart to you if you want to have a way of looking at the world through a very different filter. Do consider picking up a tarot deck and maybe a book or two, but you have to put the time in. We like to decorate our shelves with books, but that's not going to do anybody a stitch of good. So if you want to do that, then just stick to the internet and a journal from the bookstore and do more writing than you do buying, and do more writing than you do reading, and that will get you further, much further. So here, just to give you a bit of an example in her second exercise, the archetypes that she talks about, the groups that you can put your cards into, for instance. She talks about family, royalty, and she gives examples of those cards: sex, gender, bonding, balance, and hieros, shadow, devil, the tempter, which the devil is the tempter or the trickster, the mentor, the guide, the teacher, the wise old one, the higher self. So she talks about groups of cards that fall into those categories. The trickster, the fool, the clown, which of course you have the magician and the fool that fall under those categories as well as others. The magician, the alchemist, the shapeshifter, the gambler is another sort of group of archetype that she's putting in. The priestess, the witch, the enchantress, the virgin whore. The virgin whore, that's kind of like another archetype. Here they talk about the femme fatale. Anyways, so here she goes through different categories, groups, so find different groups of archetypes and see if you can group the cards into those. I'm getting a little repetitious, so I'm just going to get onto this. This is also a really, really awesome read, and I want to look more into this in a future sort of book review video. It's called The Power of Archetypes: How to Use Universal Symbols to Understand Your Behavior and Reprogramming Your Subconscious by Mary Jones. Awesome, awesome read. This really kind of looks at archetypes, and if you're into the sort of Jungian, Carl Jung, the Jungian sort of way of thinking, she gives a lot of really awesome, just a lot of information that can help you grow as a human, as a spiritual being living a human experience. Oh, here. Okay, so I'm just going to list off some archetypes so that you can then group your 78 cards into these or any combination of archetypes that just to go through the exercises for yourself. So here's the alpha, the angel, the anti-hero, the artist, the beast, the betrayer, the boss, the caretaker, in their alphabetical order, the chosen one, the creator, the damsel in distress, which basically is every princess in typical fairy tales or historical fairy tales. Now the damsel in distress, now the woman has to always be the one who saves the man, because that has become the current young woman archetype, dressed in a princess costume with the same body as every other princess in history. Okay, enough. Desperado, destroyer, devil, dictator, diplomat, diva, doppelganger, explorer, father, femme fatale. Femme fatale, that kind of goes with the virgin whore. I am going to talk about the femme fatale in a video because, that's a juicy topic. I like that one. The fool, the free spirit, the geek nerd, the genius, the boy next door. Can you find a geek nerd in these 78 cards? That would be super cool. I think you would need to have a bit of interpretation for the geek nerd. Maybe this one. Although I think he's pretty diligent. I think he'd make a pretty good husband, but I like geeks, so maybe he is a geek. I don't know. Okay. God, goddess, gypsy, healer, henchman, hermaphrodite, initiate, innocent, the jester, the judge, the justice, the killer, the king, the leader, the loner, the lone wolf, the lover, the magician, the martyr, the mentor, the messenger, the messiah, the monster, nightmare creature. Can you find one of those? Orphan, outcast or misfit, outlaw, poser, the prince or princess, the pupil, the queen, the rebel, the ruler, the sage, the scapegoat, the sidekick, Superman or Superwoman, survivor, teacher, tempter or temptress, the trickster, underling, the victim, the villain, the visionary, the warrior, the wizard. So those are a few examples of archetypes that she gives in this book, and there are so many others. But to give you a start, in grouping the 78 tarot, I mean, do take as many of those archetypes as you can and write them down, and see if you can take not only just your most favorite deck, but other decks as well, because I think that when I actually sit down and I take different decks, I won't maybe fall prey to looking at stuff like this in such a, oh, if I'm going to dislike a card, it's going to have to look like this, and if I'm going to like a card, it's going to have a lot of pretty flowers. So use your imagination and explore the boundaries that within which you live as a spiritual being living a human existence. Yeah, so there's some food for thought. I'm not sure exactly how long this. Oh, it's half an hour. Okay, I did well. I shortened it up. I really hope that you enjoy this channel. Do subscribe, like. It really does help. It gives me some encouragement to let me know that I'm doing something that's worthwhile seeing, that's worthwhile producing. Give me some commentary. Give me some, just constructive, useful information that tells me what you'd be interested in knowing more about. And onward and upward. Always onward and upward. That is the way to go. One step in front of the other. And I will see you very soon.